Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Fireside chat this month, and thank you so much for joining. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amy Pettigrew, and I'm a senior program manager with the organization, and we have a very special guest with us today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Clint for more introductions.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so we're really lucky today. We have Abdullah joining us, and his background is, maybe I'll let you tell your background. You have all sorts of great background, but basically, short version is he is a former alumni of the Borgen Project and also a Fulbright scholar who grew up in Afghanistan, and he studied abroad, both did masters in France, and then just did another master's down in Arkansas as part of his Fulbright program. But before all that, he was worked for the USAID and also worked for the World Bank in Afghanistan while he was living there. So Abdullah, we're very, very fortunate to have you here today. And anything, I missed a lot in your opening here, but anything in particular you want to add?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, good morning to everybody. And thank you so much for inviting me to this chat and this conversation. I mean, nothing much, yeah. I'm from Afghanistan. I'm born in a middle-class family back home. I did my master's first through a Campus France program in France, in Lille, in digital marketing. Then I unfortunately got a Fulbright program and came to the US at the University of Arkansas and did my second master's in economics, to be specific in agricultural economics. When I was back home, I did work with the World Bank, as Mr. Clint said, and then I started working with USAID. So through USAID, basically our program was with the Ministry of Higher Education. We were establishing the first ever Bachelor of Agribusiness and Food Technology in 5 regions of the country. Unfortunately, we did that and we enrolled that program to our national examinations for people to enroll. And I'm very happy today to be in this conversation.
Great. So we'll get into some of the heavier stuff here in a minute, but and kind of the background on what's currently going on in Afghanistan, how that's impacted you directly and your family. But I think we'll just open with you and me were talking about this previously, but there's all sorts of interesting myths us Americans tend to have about Afghanistan. So maybe we'll lead off with a few of those if you want to share a few that come to mind.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for bringing this up. So when I was living in Afghanistan, although I was working with international NGOs and international companies, I did not imagine, what are the stereotypes about people from Afghanistan. The first time when I experienced this, when I went to France, of course, before that, I had traveled abroad, but it was basically business trip. So people were not so open to me about these conversations. But when I first went to France and there I introduced myself that, hey, I'm from Afghanistan, I'm this. So the first stereotype is that most of my friends, not only French people, but they were international students from all over the world, they assume that people from Afghanistan, they speak Arabic. And actually some of them, even the Arabic people, they thought that we speak Arabic and they start right away without telling me that do you speak Arabic, they just assume that I speak Arabic and they start speaking Arabic with me. Although we do not speak Arabic at all, we speak Persian, that is our national language. The second stereotype about most of the countries are that Afghanistan are part of the Middle East, which is again not true. Afghanistan is part of Central Asia. And the second stereotype is that a lot of my classmates, especially in France, when my first exposure to international community was that they think that there's nothing going on in Afghanistan except desert, except war, which to some aspect I do not blame them because their main streamline is the media, and media always broadcast those war stuff. And to be honest, at that moment, I was very sad, not only because people have stereotypes about my country and about us, but because there are so many other aspects of the country that people do not see. And it's really hard. And I just learned a lesson from those conversations that do not judge a person, do not judge a country until you have seen that person, until you have been there. And I was really, really sad about the people, about the culture, because I was born in Afghanistan, I raised in Afghanistan. I see different part of the country. I've traveled all over the country. And it was really not fair to label a particular group, a particular people, just because of a few stereotypes. And that was a lesson that I learned, that do not label anybody. Like even till now, I hate the word labeling. And the whole nation, like we are almost 40 million people. And if you label, okay, of course, we do have some problems. We do have war problems. We do have corruption problem. We do have 3% of desert that people mention, but that is not the whole picture of the country. If you want to see the whole picture of the country, if you want to see the whole culture, I'm not talking specifically about Afghanistan. I'm pretty sure there are stereotypes about different countries in the world. I personally also have so many stereotypes about different countries. But whenever you see things from a close, the closer you look, the less you see. So I learned that, look, how much it will affect people if you try to stereotype them, if you try to, you're not being in that position and try to be judgmental about the situation. It was not fair. So, I mean, as a Fulbright scholar, even in the US, I mean, the mission of the Fulbright program is to increase mutual understanding between people of the United Nations, United States, and people of the rest of the country. So here, whenever I was advocating, when I was talking about Afghanistan, I was so happy that I can see the changes in the mentality of the people, because most of the people, they are not one a stereotype. They are just subconsciously, because of the media influence, they're influenced by that. But the more you teach them, the more you try to show them what are the other aspects of the media that the country that the media do not show, they become more interested and they want to learn and they want to explore that options. So yeah, these were the common stereotypes that I found about my country, which people in the whole world were thinking about the country, which was, as I said, again, it's a lesson learned for me. And I hope it was a lesson learned for the rest of the people to do not label the whole situation just because of a few stereotypes that you might have about the country.
Good. Yeah, I think even all the Hollywood movies have people in Afghanistan speaking Arabic as well. So it's kind of, it seems to have really kind of settled in. So let's talk a little about your current situation. Obviously, everyone's been following the news and it's changed a lot, the situation in Afghanistan. So maybe if you want to share a little bit how that's directly impacted you and your family, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the situation in Afghanistan was changed really rapidly. I mean, no one, first of all, thought to be changed to that extent. In the Taliban, a terrorist group who killed so many civilians, who killed so many international communities, member in Afghanistan, and they become in charge of the whole country once again. No one have thought that. People, I mean, there was a contract between the US and the Taliban to 2020 under the President Trump administration that Taliban will be part of the government, but there was no agreement, at least not publicly, that Taliban will gain control of the whole country and they will have their own extremist ideology on the people of Afghanistan. First of all, I want to clarify as an Afghan that Taliban is not equal to Afghan people. Taliban is completely a different ideology. They have a completely different agenda. They are supported by neighboring countries and their own agendas. So Taliban is not equal to Afghan people. As you see that even recently, those extremist groups, but despite all those challenges, a lot of, especially women in Afghanistan, they are trying to fight for their rights. Because I have to be honest here, like women are the one who are sacrificed with this bad policy. Because recently Taliban announced their cabinet, there was not even a single woman in the whole cabinet. All of them was religious warlord in the cabinet, and none of them were women or from another ethnicity back in Afghanistan. And plus, Taliban said that women are not allowed to work in a decision-making level. And I mean, that is another fortunate for the whole country, because if a nation fails women, that nation will fail. You cannot ignore the half of society. If you do that, the result is a country like Afghanistan, especially with those ideology people like Taliban, that they just think that women are not capable of doing that such thing, which is absolutely wrong. And it's the half of society. I mean, with those mentality, and that's the thing that unfortunately as an Afghan, the future is dark, not only for Afghanistan, but for any other country that they ignore women's participations and their capability and they doubt on that. So that is something which was really, really sad. And apart from that, I mean, the life of people who used to work with international agencies in Afghanistan is in a big, big threat. And that's why the US government launched a P1 and P2 program for those people to evacuate them as soon as possible from Afghanistan. I, as a person who used to work with the US government through USAID in Afghanistan, and I'm a Fulbright scholar, I mean, educated in the Western world. My whole family is back in Afghanistan. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brothers. And even you're in the loop that even I personally received a threat letter from Taliban a couple of weeks ago. And they threatened me that you're an American spy, you're trying to promote a Western culture in Afghanistan, and that's why you will be prosecuted if we caught you. So right now I'm in the US, but my whole family is back home. Right now, my family, they are moved temporarily to another place in order to hide their identity. But you are in the loop that I'm really worried about them because right now, US government is completely evacuated from Afghanistan. The whole international community is evacuated from Afghanistan. Taliban will do whatever they can, and no one is there to prevent them. And they already start searching for those targeted people who are used to work with the US government. And that's why I was trying so hard to contact the US Department of State and through Fulbright program, the Borgen Project, to help me to evacuate my family at least to a third country where their life can be like in a safe. But unfortunately, so far my family is back home, but they are fine. Fortunately, for now, I talked to them last night. But still, like the situation is going on back home with the Taliban searching the country. It's not only about my family. There are hundreds of other family members like me who have association and affiliation with the US government. And now their life and their family life is in a big, big danger. And they're just hiding their identity and finding a way to evacuate from the country. So it's a really sad moment, not only for the Afghanistan, but for the whole world, because the terrorist group, for example, the Ministry of Interior Affairs that right now Taliban appointed as a committee member, the US FBI, they have a bounty of $5 million anyone who catched it. But he's publicly announced the Minister of Interior Affairs of a country. So a country with those situation, it's a threat for the whole world, not only for the country of Afghanistan, not only for the people of Afghanistan, but for the whole world. I mean, we should not wait for another 9/11 happen, then we go and prevent them. We have to prevent them before it happens. And unfortunately, with this situation, the terrorist groups are controlling the charge of the whole country. You know the consequences, which is very, very bad.
Yeah. And I think one thing too, it's also interesting too, is it's not just the Taliban's in control and your family has to go into hiding, but at this point they don't have the jobs they had 2 months ago or a month ago.
There's another thing. So Taliban, when they took over the control, like my mom used to be a high school teacher. My dad used to work with the Ministry of Commerce. But now both of them, they are not working. First of all, women are not allowed to work outside. And second, Taliban, of course, they will appoint their own people with their own ideology. My family member has completely opposite of political opinion with Taliban. So of course, Taliban will appoint those people who have a similar point of view, similar ideology to them. So right now, of course, like I'm the only person like that, the first child of the family, have to support my family because at the moment, my mom, my dad, they are both, first of all, they are hiding. And second, they are not able to work. Of course, they cannot work because Taliban, first of all, they are trying to search and find my family members to prosecute them because of my affiliation to them. And the second, they cannot work because Taliban already appointed those people who are in their group or in their party or in their ideology. So this is another challenge that my family is facing right now.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, that's that whole side. We just don't fully understand the whole consequences of stuff like this as well. Okay, so in terms of, I think one thing always missing sometimes in the public discussion in the United States about immigration and refugees is just the challenges people are trying to escape from sometimes. And to be candid, if you had to go back to the US or back to Afghanistan, what would likely happen to you?
I mean, first of all, in my case, I already received a threat letter from the Taliban. And I'm also even afraid because Taliban, according to reports, already have access to a database, those people who used to work with the US and these people who used to work with the government. So my identity is already exposed. My identity is mainly, I think, exposed because of social media. Because as a Fulbright scholar, I said that my job was to increase mutual understanding to the people of Afghanistan and to the United States. And in my view, the best way and the quickest way and efficient way was through social media engagement, because through that social media, you can reach more people. And of course, Taliban and other terrorist groups, they are actively engaged with social media. So I used to post a lot about the Fulbright program when I was in France, when I used to with USAID. So through that, my identity is already exposed to them. So if I go back to a country according to the threat letter, they will definitely prosecute me. I mean, there is no doubt about that. I mean, I'm saying this, not I'm predicting. There are so many people who already happened to them. Taliban, even before getting the control of the whole country, they targeting those people specifically who used to work with the USAID. They put explosion bomb to their cars, even they attacked their compound, their offices with their suicide bombers, and with the rocket launch and with so many other attacks. So they were actively looking for those people who used to engage. And the reason they are doing that, so they want to show to the other soldiers, because most of the soldiers were fighting by the name of religion or by the name of any ideology. First of all, they are so illiterate. I mean, I personally believe that there is no religion in the world who will be happy or give you a reward to killing an innocent people. If there is a religion like that, and that will be completely false and that will be completely ignorant. So the base of, if you try to base a religion that, okay, you kill that people, even that people do not believe in what you believe, still it doesn't make sense that you kill that person and you will get an eternal reward for that. But most of the Taliban soldiers, they are ignorant. They are the people who are brainwashed since they are 4 or 5 years old. They are going to madrasas, and madrasas, the Taliban, the leaders will train them whatever ideology they want them to believe. And they're believing on that. And once you kill those people, they will give them extra motivation, extra encouragement that, see, those people who used to work with the USAID or the US government, the Western world, this will be the result. And that will give them extra courage to fight and even sacrifice their life because of that ideology. So not only me, but as I said, hundreds of other people who go to Afghanistan with that situation, the only one destination will be waiting for them, and that is persecution. And it's not only about me anymore, it's about my family, you know. And I'm also like afraid that because of my work, I mean, I do not consider my work a bad thing. Like I did what I did to promote Afghanistan an image to the Western world that they had never seen before, and the media did not broadcast it before. But unfortunately, Taliban do not understand that. Taliban think that I am a spy of an American. And because I have an affiliation with my family, and my family will also be in danger. And that's very sad. That because of my work, my whole family members, like how I can, like, especially recently, it's really hard for me to talk to them. Because of my affiliation to the USAID, because of my affiliation with the Western world, now my family, they are in big trouble. Like now I'm sitting in the US. Physically wise, I'm not faced with any trouble and challenges, but mentally wise, I'm so devastated, especially because I'm always thinking that because of my work, now my family is facing a tremendous, like a challenging time, that why they should face. And especially, at least at the moment, I cannot do anything to help them. At least I'm not there with them physically, and I'm thousands miles away from them, and plus they are the one who are suffering so much right now, and that's something that's bothering me the most.
And for those who aren't familiar with USAID, it's the U.S. government's agency that does humanitarian work. So it's a very positive organization that does great work helping people of Afghanistan. So it's also interesting, and this happens a lot of aid agencies and relief workers as well, but that they're being targeted as well. It's not just people who help the military or involved in the war efforts, people who are actually, helping feed people and helping poor farmers and things along those lines that are also being targeted by the Taliban too. So that's pretty crazy. Okay, so just back it up a minute too. So like, what was it like just growing up in Afghanistan while the war was going on? And I guess maybe give us I guess a window into both the normal everyday life of it, but then also what it's like when there's bombs going off and things occurring around you.
Yeah, so fortunately, like the new generation of Afghanistan, like especially those people in my age, they were born, the Taliban was already like they were the last years of their government. So they were facing a new phase of Afghanistan, especially after 9/11 happened and the US came to Afghanistan. That was a new hope for the whole generation, especially for the young generation of Afghanistan, to make a change to the world. So from 2001 to 2004 or 5, Afghanistan was one of the peaceful countries in the region. There was no war, no fight. But by the time that the US diverted all their resources to Iraq, and that was the time the Taliban started re-emerging again and again from different parts of the country. And that's where they start explosion attacks, they start suicide bombing attacks. Especially for me, whenever I was working back home, I was going to the office. I was always, whenever in the morning, I was saying goodbye to my family. I was not sure that I will be back home at the evening because Taliban was targeting and suicide bombing everywhere. Like the war was in Iraq and Syria. In those countries, there was a place where there was a war zone. If you go to that place, you will be in danger. But in Afghanistan, there was no green area, there was no war zone. Anywhere an explosion could have happened. An explosion could have happened near the presidential palace. Explosion happened in high school. Explosion happened in US compound, USAID compound. Explosion happened in universities. Explosion happened even in the wedding hall. Explosion happened even in the mosque. So nowhere was safe. Nowhere was safe. So I grown up with those fear every day, every minute. For example, if I was going to work, if I was going shopping, if I was going out with my family, the fear of going to die or there will be a suicide bomb by Taliban was always there. But despite of all those challenges, the young generation of Afghanistan had a hope. Like personally for me, as a Fulbright scholar, I had a really lot of dreams for my country. I really wanted to go back home and make a difference to my country. And the reason was because I know the potential of the country. I know the people of Afghanistan, that they really want peace. They want stability. They want a normal life like any other human being in the whole world. And to be honest, they deserve that. I mean, what they have did wrong because of the corrupt politicians, because of a specific group of people, the nations, the whole nation is suffering right now. And that is not the problem of the ordinary people. That is the problem of those corrupt politicians that they are bribing the whole country. But despite all those problems and all those corruptions, the young generation of Afghanistan, they were striving. They were like the literacy rate after 9/11 happened, 2001, it increased so much. Like before that, it was 11%, but recently it was more than 60, 70%. Women's was one of the main achievements after the international community came to Afghanistan. We had so many improvements, so many rewards for in the women department. Like we had women minister, we had Olympic silver medal, so many achievements. But and the reason was because there was hope. You know, when you have hope, you always try to work for that, and you always try to get that done. But with the current situation in Afghanistan, when Taliban came, those hope that we had, especially the young generation, that we will build our country, that we will make a better future for the people of this country, that hope, at least for now, is gone. And that is the hardest part. For me, I studied my whole life just because to have a better future for myself, for my family, and the country. But now the country is in situations that even I cannot go back to my home country, a country where I'm born. And that is the hardest part, you know, that you cannot go to your own country and that you really want to help them because of a specific group of people that they're living there. So, I mean, for thousands of Afghans like me, that's one of the heartbreaking moments that they cannot go back to their country. And even those people who are there because of fear of persecutions, they want to go and get out of the country. And right now, I'm not even, the most fear for me is not only Taliban, those brain drain that's happening in Afghanistan. Because most of the people who study in the Western world, who have knowledge, skills, and ability to make a difference, all of those people do not see their lives and their family member life to be safe. And that's why they're always trying to flee and evacuate from the country. If all those brain evacuate and go abroad, the country will be left with those ignorant and warlord. And that is the problem. And that will, again, you will have a civil war because all those people try to fight because of the power. And Afghanistan will go back to those 90s that we had war in every street of the country.
So I think a lot of times people would think, well, sounds countries been taken over by Taliban, there's war going on. Why don't most people just leave the country? And what would be your kind of, if you want to give us insight on the likelihood of that ever being possible?
I mean, first of all, evacuation, even right now, there are so many even US citizens in Afghanistan right now that they cannot evacuate. For now, first of all, there is no international flights for everyone available. Even my brother, who is studying civil engineering in India, and he has his own passport and his own like visa, but he cannot travel to India. And he is legally like have to go and start their studies. And he was visiting my family members because of the summer break. But now the Taliban happened and he had his ticket, his visa, his passport, everything, but he cannot go back. Taliban says that until we form a new government, no one are allowed to leave the country. So the evacuation, first of all, at the immediate term, it's not possible. Second, if everyone goes out of Afghanistan, first of all, leaving your home country, it's really hard decision. At least for me, it's really hard decision. As I said, I did not, of course, studying in the West is a really good experience. You learn, you make network, you meet new people. It's really good. But eventually you will go back where you belong. You know, that's where your people are. That's where your parents are. That's where you see your future. That's where you've grown up to do something for that country. And that's why the decision to leave the country is not easy, especially if you come to a Western world. I mean, it's not completely safe as well because of those stereotypes. I mean, many people have faced so many discrimination, so many challenges. I cannot label all of them again, but of course, we all have seen those cases that a lot of people, whenever, for example, they migrate to European country, American country, they face so many a new aspect of challenges for them, you know, to label them that, oh, because of the religion, label them because of their background, label them because of their ethnicity, label them because of the affiliation with specific group of people. So even for those people, it is really hard for them to start a new life in a completely different world, in a completely different culture. And adaptation to the culture will be so much different, especially for those people who live their whole life in Afghanistan in a completely different part of the world, and coming to a completely different part of the world is so hard. Only those people who understand, who actually did that, who actually tried. Even now, for example, if you want to move from one house to the other house, even moving from one house to the next house is so much struggle, so much problem. Just imagine you are moving from a completely from a different country to a different part of the world. I mean, the decision is so hard unless people are so much forced, so much had to do that. I mean, otherwise it's really hard to do that, to leave your hometown, leave your friends, leave your family members back home, and just pack the bag and go to the next part of the world. I mean, that's really hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, so now all the borders are currently closed to even
Yeah.
go to neighboring country. And I think typically too, a lot of people don't realize is even if you flee into another country, most likely the neighboring country would have refugee camps set up, and they often will only allow the refugee population coming into that country to stay in the camps and not actually leave the camps at all. So people kind of end up in that no man's land of having to live in a camp but not be able to work in the camp or work in the local, interact at all with the local population as well, and just kind of wait it out until either things stabilize or they find a safe haven in another country. So just bad options all around as you and your family are encountering. But
I mean, we had that experience in 90s when the civil war happened. A lot of the Afghans, they flee to neighboring countries, Iran, Pakistan. And even in those countries, as you said, they were labeling those Afghans with the different bad names. And they, most of the time, they were not welcoming. Although Afghans were the one who helped them to build. Of course, they were used as a labor to build the constructions. And of course, we had also very educated people to flee the country with a skill. But they don't see, especially a group of people, and they always label them. And as you say, they're putting them in a camps. So those people are called stateless because you cannot go back home. And in those countries that you wanna, especially those neighbor countries, they will not so welcoming, and that's a very hard life for those immigration. So even as you said, that even if they have options to flee the country, it's really not an easy decision. So okay, yeah, let's go to another country. It's a lot other challenges that they will face for sure.
Yeah. And with all this stuff still going on in Afghanistan, there's still a global pandemic occurring. So what are you hearing in the country on how that's impacting people? And I know there's probably not as much testing and things.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there was, like, most of the people in Afghanistan was to some extent, some people like in the US, that they were not believing in vaccines. And most of the people, in a joke apart, I would say that, okay, we are Muslims, so Muslims will not contract it to virus, which is very ignorant. And that's the result happened, that in every household, according to the World Bank report, that at least one family member have died because of the coronavirus situation. Especially in my situation, my aunt died last year because of the coronavirus. I mean, she was not the one who was not believing in virus, to be clear, but she had a pre-condition with diabetes and blood pressure. And that's why, unfortunately, we lost my aunt. But as I said, according to the World Bank report, in every household, at least one family members have died because of the corona situation. But still, because life in Afghanistan is not in the US that you can do all your work online. So most of the work you have to be in person because the technology is not that advanced in those countries. Yeah. So people, in order to feed their family members, they don't have any other options but to start working despite the coronavirus challenges. Most of the population, as you said, they were not vaccinated. But they have so many other problems, economical problem, security problem, family problem, that the coronavirus priority come really at the bottom of the list for them. But it doesn't mean that their lives are not in danger. It doesn't mean that they are not dying. They are dying. But as I said, that when you categorize your priorities, coronavirus and the persecution and protect them is coming at the end of the list for those people.
Yeah. You kind of hit on this before, but the Taliban really, in your opinion, doesn't have much public support in the region. Is that pretty accurate to say, and overall?
I mean, Taliban, as I said, who are Talibans? Talibans are the militias who are 60,000, not more. In a country where we have almost 40 million people, Taliban, the total population of them is 60,000 or 70,000 at most. So how Taliban gained the control of the whole nation, and especially with the supporting of the US and NATO, and that is the longest war in the history of the United States. United States, which is the strongest military in the whole world, they spent trillions of dollars in Afghanistan to combat the Taliban. But what happened? Like, we came back 2001, Taliban gained control, and those terrorist members, they started forming another government. So without the helping of the neighbor countries, it's impossible to gain that control and to maintain that much victory. Because Osama bin Laden, like, that is the main reason why US came and invaded Afghanistan in 2001. But he killed and died in Pakistan. And most of the other insurgent groups, and including Taliban, they're military based, they're madrasas, everything is in Pakistan. I'm not trying to publicly accuse them, but that is a fact, that their militaries, their madrasas, everything is supported. Even 2 days ago, the head of ISI, the agent group in Pakistan, came to Afghanistan, the spy agent, and they start, and right after 2 days after that, Taliban start forming their new cabinet, new government. So Taliban has a strong affiliation with Pakistan, and Pakistan as like a puppet. And that is another reason why we are very afraid and we are not trusting Taliban, because Taliban are not independent. They claim to be independent, but they are not. They are directly under influence of Pakistan and other neighboring countries. And who are influencing Pakistan? China. China has a direct influence with Pakistan. Even Chinese, there are some reports that they already have some contract with Taliban, that they're helping with the security, with the internet, with the airport stuff. So it's all over the region. I assuming that because the US was based in Afghanistan, and we have a border with China in the northeast, and China think that, okay, we cannot tolerate that the US base would be so close to us. And that is why through the Pakistan and Pakistan to the Taliban, and Taliban fighting against the US and other international NATOs to get them out of the country so they can have the whole region by themselves. So without the help of China, without the help of Pakistan, without the help of Iran, Taliban would have not been able to gain the control of the whole country, especially a country, as I said, that our armies were 300,000, 3-4 times bigger than the armies of the Taliban. We were equipped with so many equipments, military-wise, arms. We were trained by the international communities, but still we were defeated. So it shows that how much other, especially the neighboring countries, were investing in terrorists because of their own gain. But again, who are losing in this? Afghanistan is basically a battleground between the superpower of the world. It is a fight between China and the United States, but it's a proxy war. They try to do their fighting inside Afghanistan instead of their own bordering. But who will be labeled as a terrorist country? Afghanistan. Who will be displaced from the country? The Afghans. Who will be labeled as a economically and financially devastating situation? Afghan people. But because of those neighboring countries and those superpower countries, this is the fate of the whole nations, which apparently the whole world doesn't care about, because a terrorist group is gaining control, but the world is silent, and they are expecting that they will see a different face of Taliban, which I personally think is a huge mistake.
Is there any, in your opinion, things that could have been done better in terms of making sure the Taliban didn't get strong? And you mentioned this to me before, but particularly in rural regions. And is there anything that, in your opinion?
So why Taliban is farming? As I said, the population of Afghanistan is 70%. They are living in rural area, and one of the main reasons why Taliban were able to gain more soldiers from rural area because of the financial problem. Most of the terrorists, not only in Afghanistan, but the whole world, if you see the main cause of it, it's financial problem, it's economical problem, it's a direct cause for that. When people don't have any jobs, when people doesn't have anything to eat, they will become desperate. And when you become desperate, you can do so many mistakes. So Taliban were using from that weakness part, because in rural area, a lot of people were dependent on agriculture. So there was no factories, no economical sustainability, and Taliban were identified that mistake, identified that weakness, and tried to hire more people from rural area. And of course, they brainwashed them, and they gave them, and apart from the financial gain that they will take, they will also promise that if you even die, you will go to paradise because you are fighting for the holy war, according to Taliban. According to me, like it's a subjective opinion, and according to other economists, if you try to have a strong economic hold in any country, the effect of the terrorist group, not only Taliban, will reduce substantially. But unfortunately, in Afghanistan, even the US and other international agencies, one thing that they did, there was nothing permanent. Like even now, we do not have any electricity in Afghanistan. We don't have a lot of dams. We import our electricity from our neighbor countries. If you do not pay them, the electricity will be gone. There is no factories. US spent, of course, trillions of dollars that was mainly on military, on the war base, but we don't have any factories. We don't have any other infrastructures, basic infrastructures in the country, and our base is still empty, it's void. And when the base is empty and the base is void, of course, we have a corrupt politicians as well, which also impacted that Afghanistan will become the situation. But overall, if we do not build a strong economic situation, security and peace and stability will never come to those regions, especially Afghanistan, which is strategically in a really, really important place, because we are bordered with Iran, we are bordered with China, we are bordered with Central Asia, we are bordered with Pakistan, and also we have a strong tie with India. So all these strategical decisions made Afghanistan a very vulnerable, plus it's very weak, so everyone can easily influence them. And the West, I don't know, maybe they miscalculated, but the project was basically temporary. The project was not permanent, you know. If they had a project of millions of dollars, that project was just for a specific period of time, for 5 years. But after they stopped their investing, their funding, that project would have died. So there was not any fundamental economical situation in Afghanistan that we could have changed, that right now we would have gained different. And I think that is the main reason why they failed, because the employment rate was so low, because most of the people that they were employed by the US government, it was artificial, because they're working as a translator or as a contract based on different projects that they used to were doing. But after all those projects are gone, most of those people are unemployed. As I said, Afghanistan, like 75 to 80% of people depend on agriculture. They are doing agriculture, but still we are importing more than 50% of our agricultural products from our neighbor countries. A country where 70 to 80% depends on agriculture, they're doing farming, but still importing 50% of their agriculture needs from neighboring countries. It means that their agriculture is so weak, their economic infrastructure is so weak, and the international communities did not focus so much on the economic aspect, and they mainly focus on military. They thought that the military is something that we will find a solution for it. But again, if you do not have a strong economical hold, even the military, which Afghanistan is a pure example of it, you will not be able to succeed. So, I mean, the first mistake, I would have said that the economical situation. And first, the second one would be the priority. As I said, that the US diverted their attention to Iraq in 2003 and 2004. And all those military generals, they moved to Iraq, and Afghanistan became a second option for the West. And that was the reason why the terrorist group started and re-emerging. And also the airstrikes. Another mistake the US and the Western world have done, they were trying to not understand the culture of a country. If you do not understand the culture of it and you just directly try to do whatever you want, you will face with a reaction from the people. So in Afghanistan, especially in rural area, people are very conservative. But Americans, they were trying to go inside their houses and search their women's. And in a conservative and religious country like Afghanistan, especially in rural area, when you try to go in a house, especially as an American soldiers, and search their women, search their houses, that of course will spark a motivations to fight. And those ideologies and those warlords will say, see, these non-Muslims, they will come and search your women, search your house, and that's why you have to fight against them. And of course, those people will do it willingly. So before understanding the culture aspect of a country, and if you just try to force them, even though if you're the most strongest military in the world, still you will get defeated. You know, still you will not be at least succeed in the mission that you had. So those not understanding the culture of a society, and not understanding what is the real solution, not temporary solution, and diverting Afghanistan into second option, one of all the reasons why Afghanistan came again to those dark ages where Taliban occupied the country.
So I think for just from the American perspective, a lot of people are wondering, we spent 20 years there and a lot of resources. Has anything good come out of this? And in your opinion, what's maybe some positive lasting effects of there, and even not just, I guess, both from a future standpoint and just from that 20-year period, if there's any positive things you could think of that came out of it or you think will come out of it moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, if you say that the coming American international community doesn't have any impact, that would not be fair. I mean, I'm a prime example of it. If US government do not came to Afghanistan, me and thousands of people like me would not have the opportunity to go to the Western world and have education. And right now I'm talking to American audience about what is going on in the country. I mean, that is all because of the US investment in Afghanistan. Plus the women rights. That is, I think, one of the main issues and the main achievement that we had because of the international communities, including US and Afghanistan. Before that, which is happening right now, women were not allowed to study, women were not allowed to work, women were not allowed to even go outside without accompanied by another male. I mean, that much dark age. But with the US intervening in Afghanistan, I mean, before Taliban regimes, it was completely different situation. We had women's politician, women singer, women athlete. We had women in all part of society. As at the beginning of the speech, I said that if you fail women, if a nation fails women, that nation will fail because you cannot ignore the half part of society. And one of the main things that we achieved because of the US and because of the international community was the women's rights. And because of freedom of speech. The media was another thing which was really, I mean, before the Taliban, we had one of the freedom of speech in the whole region, even Pakistan, Iran, and China, those neighboring countries were not had that much freedom of speech that Afghan people had in such a short period of time. So freedom of speech, media, and women's rights, and have the opportunity to go abroad and travel and see the rest of the world and come back. I mean, Mr. Borgen, those Taliban's who fighters who are fighting in Afghanistan because of the holy wars, most of them, they even do not go outside of their own villages. If they go abroad and see what's happening in the whole world, and because of what cause they're fighting and the rest of the world is reached, now the people, the rest of the world trying to go to the Mars, trying to go to the moon, and people in Afghanistan are fighting because of those fundamental and those smaller steps. That's very sad to see that, especially a person to see the Western world, that the rest of the world is thinking some completely about different topic. I mean, they already bypassed all those situations hundreds of years back. But those Taliban who never traveled, they just, everything was so, their mindset, their dimension of thinking were so small. And because of that, they think that this is their whole world. This is their whole, because of their opinion, because they see from another angle. So again, that if we ignore that the US, all the intervention, everything is wasteful, I mean, that would not be fair for sure. And believe it or not, we still have, we did not lose our hopes. I mean, those Afghans, those young people who are educated abroad, I mean, those Taliban, those extremists will not last long, and I hope it will last long, because if you do not continue with the will of the people, those governments will not be sustainable. Because nowadays, if you have a survey of Afghanistan, maybe more than 90% of the Afghanistan people are not in favor of Taliban. And you cannot, 10% or 5% of the population cannot rule the 90% of the population. And if they do, it will be just a matter of time that their government will collapse, especially those, because we are not the generation of 90s, that we haven't seen the world, we haven't seen how the things are working. We are a completely different generation. We have seen the world and we know their agenda, their ideology. So with those mentality and with those experience, the Taliban government, terrorist group, will not last long in the country, because we know what are their plans are, and we know what they're trying to gain from this country. So I hope, but again, we cannot do it alone. It should be international community engagement, but this time it should be a different approach. Because if international community forget Afghanistan, again, as I said, that we should not wait for another Paris attack, we should not wait for another 9/11, that we again came and intervened in Afghanistan. Because if you see the whole time, those people who architecture of the 9/11, they were first of all not Afghans, they were Arabs, they are from Saudis. But now US have the strongest tie with the Saudis, with the Arab world. And Afghanistan is completely forgotten, you know. I mean, with that strategy, it's not good for Afghanistan, it's not good for the whole world.
Well, Bill, I really appreciate you taking time today and speaking candidly and sharing your story and giving your perspective on Afghanistan. It's really helpful for all of us to learn from you. So I greatly appreciate it.
I'm also very grateful, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and other volunteers. And I'm very grateful to be able to raise my voice, and I'm very grateful for the Borgen Project to give me this opportunity. And I'm also requesting for all those volunteers, not just because of Afghanistan, but because of any other case, try to always advocate for what's right, and try to always advocate for, even though if you've not been to that country, try to see the bigger picture of it and try to see what will be the impact of the whole world. And please don't forget Afghanistan, because as I said, it's not for the people of Afghanistan, but it's for all people of the world. I personally do not want to have any other human being die because of this insurgent, because of these ignorant people. But if you let them do whatever they want, they will definitely do it because they're ignorant. So you cannot expect anything good from ignorant people and from the people like Taliban, from terrorists. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate it. And yeah, everyone have a good rest of your day. And I think Amy's posted a link there too if people want to get involved in and how they can express their concerns to the White House and Congress. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robert.
Have a good day.